Witam Państwa serdecznie, Błażej Hrabkowicz. To jest 29. edycja Międzynarodowego Festiwalu Filmowego EnergaCAMERIMAGE w Toruniu. Our guest is cinematographer Markus Förderer. Hello.
Hello. Hi.
I hope you pronounced your name right.
Very good. You're the first one who got it right.
Great. I'm very happy. You're doing fine. Everything good in Torun?
Everything good. Yeah, just arrived at the festival. I'm very excited to be here.
Not your first time.
Not my first time.
I think you're a frequent. From what I heard, you're a frequent guest.
Yeah, I think I only missed 1 year in a long time. Yeah.
Fantastic. Now you're here as the jury member in a Polish competition.
In the cinematographer's debut.
Cinematographer's debut competition, of course. What I'm interested in is what are your criteria when watching another cinematographer's work? Because of course this is the festival focusing on the cinematographer's work, but we cannot view your job, apart from the other elements of the film. You're integral part of the visual style, storytelling, and so on. So what are the main things you're looking for?
In my case, we're doing the director's debut competition.
Okay, so this is the final version.
This is the final version.
Director's debut competition.
Oh, did I say it wrong? So I'm in the director's debut competition. So it's an interesting case because it's a cinematography festival. So I think we are looking at, of course, the director's work, like what's the impact of the movie, but that all ties into the visual work, right? Like, is it a director who's using the camera and the visual storytelling to tell a story? I think that's a special place at CAMERIMAGE to make sure the two go together.
Yeah. So this is what you're looking for: the visual storytelling in terms of visual elements, and how well does the director uses camera.
I mean, the most important, right, is it entertaining, or is the audience captivated? And then we also look for the visual storytelling. But I think the most important thing is just to see, and we try to treat every movie on its own. Like there's no fixed criteria. I think we just watch it and then discuss it with the other jury members and to see what stands out and why. I think there's no fixed criteria in movie making and like in art in general. I think that's the beauty about it, to just feel the impact of the movie and talk about it, what makes it strong, and hopefully find something that stands out.
What are your are there any favorite directors of yours in terms of visual storytelling, sort of the masters of visual storytelling you sort of look up to?
God, there's so many. Like there's so many, and hopefully more and more. But it's hard to name. Like, sure, right? There's a lot of like Kubrick or the recent ones. I just watched Dune again, like this Denis Villeneuve, right? And his collaborators is just outstanding. Yeah,
I remember the experiment that Steven Soderbergh once did. He took the sound, the dialogues, everything, music, out of Riders of the Lost Ark. And he put it like this, and he said, look at the mastery of visual storytelling that Spielberg is exhibiting here. You can understand everything just through image. So this is, I guess, something that is the master level of visual storytelling.
I think that's a great strategy, to turn the sound off and see if the image convey the story and not rely on close-ups and talking heads, right? Like, and it is always a process. That's why I think it's so important to have a close relationship as a cinematographer with your director and the editor, to watch stuff, go to test screenings and talk about it while it's in post-production, and see maybe there was this interesting shot, like why did you not use it? And maybe there's a good reason for it, but sometimes it's also good to remind them what was the initial idea of why a certain shot is important to tell that story.
In terms of actors, we always we tend to think of them as through the dialogue and listen to their dialogue, listen to what they're saying, but they're also an integral visual part of the film. So I'm interested in your sort of approach and idea about the actor as a part of, visual style in a frame.
As a landscape, the face. It's so important, right? Like your main character, depending what you do, like this is all the emotion happens there. That's why I think the actors' eyes are so important. Like I did a movie a couple of years ago called Eye Origins, which was all about the eyes, and I learned so much about lighting eyes and how much expression there can be even without seeing anything else, just the eye. And I think that's something I really pay attention to capture that emotion in life, because there's so much subtleties happening in an actor's eye. Do
you also try to do this in this in bigger productions? Because you do small dramas, but you also do this big blockbuster films, like for example Red Notice recently.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think it's all about the performance, right, and the emotional journey of the characters, and that comes from the eyes. So I try to use a couple techniques to make sure, no matter how dark it is or in what environment, to really always keep that connection with the audience, to feel the life in the eyes.
What are those techniques? Can you name a few?
Yeah, it's like lighting, right? When you go dark, either on purpose you want a specific eye light, what is the size and the shape and the softness or sharpness, or sometimes reflecting specific shapes in a character's eyes, to like in a villain, so you can't quite tell what it is, but something feels evil about this person's eyes, and it's the eye is a glossy reflective surface, so you can really shape it by reflecting certain elements, and that's something that the audience is not consciously aware of, which is, I think, really interesting to work with that.
Do you define a good cinematographer's work or a good visual work in using these criteria, that the audience cannot be aware of the technique you're using? They cannot be sitting there going, oh, that's how they did this, but they had to be sort of, the effect has to be that they are immersed in the story?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, right, like everything that happens in a dialogue is it's like rationally you can process that, but what happens on a visual level is usually happens subconsciously and hopefully on an emotional level. That's why it's such a powerful visual language, right? Like either you do a push-in or do you use a certain cold or warm color to elevate the performance. And that's something audiences, I think, all around the world react to in a similar way, but they might not be able to point their finger at why this is. I think that's really exciting. It's also a discovery for me as a cinematographer. There's so much to learn, and there's always new ways to discover. There's no blueprint on how to do these things. I think you read the script, you watch the rehearsal, and you bring in the right ideas to the table.
Yesterday, when introducing Madres Paralelas by Pedro Almodóvar, José Luis Alcaín, the cinematographer of the film, said that their choice, one of their visual choices, was to make everything in the frame in focus, so that the audience can choose what they look at, because they can see everything very clearly. And I'm wondering if you, as a cinematographer, if you have this awareness of when making the film, of that you're really steering the eye of the viewer, the eye of the audience, and you can give them. You can decide, alongside with the director, of course, but you can decide how much freedom you give them in terms of choosing what they look at.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think it's important to steer to a certain degree, but also like on these big movies like Red Notice, where you have amazing locations and a certain big scale, you want to give the audience the freedom to discover certain things, but not randomly, right? You don't want someone to be distracted by some shiny object in the background. You want to make sure the audience can see what's important in this shot, right? Get the information, but then still feel at least the illusion of freedom to wander around. But I'm not a big fan of like deep focus. I think it feels also like a natural, when you close your eyes and try to remember what I just saw. I see you, and I don't see the background. Like I think it's a bit how the psyche works. You focus and isolate certain objects or persons in a shot.
So this is actually it's interesting what you're saying, because this classical, for example, Hollywood style of making the the area of focus really clear, like the area of focus, for example, people, characters, actors talking, and everything else sort of blurred. From your perspective, that would be sort of mimicking our own way of perceiving the world?
Yeah, I think it's not the way we physically see. Our eyes have a fairly big depth of field, right? But I think psychologically how we memorize things, and I think that's right. What you say about movies, that movies are it's like you're watching a dream in a cinema in a dark space, and I think like I personally don't want to capture reality, but like more like a dreamlike state, and I think there's an interesting tool to work with selective focus.
Yeah, I read somewhere that you said that no matter what type of the film, small drama, big blockbuster, the choices you make as a cinematographer are quite similar. Which lens to use, how to light the scene, and so on. But for example, with a film like Red Notice, or the one you did very recently, which is sort of this big adventure genre film entertainment, is it? I imagine, maybe I'm wrong, but I can imagine that this is something, the rhythm of the film is different in this kind of film, the scope of the film is different, and the choices you make may be a bit different, because there are, different goals to achieve that when you're doing a small psychological drama.
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with the director and the director's vision and the collaborating, and some directors are very trying to explore and then looking for some happy accidents, and some others have a clear plan, and like with Ross and Thurber, he's amazing. He's a writer director, so he wrote the whole thing, and it's a world he created and has certain ideas, I think, in which direction to go, but then also he's trusting me a lot to bring ideas to the table and explore the right approach. But it's, of course, you have on a big movie it's like that's what I said earlier in earlier interviews. It's a similar process. You have always a schedule. You never have enough time. You never have enough budget. It's just what I feel like on the big movies, and that's a misconception. People think you have a lot of time. In my experience, it's the opposite. Like the bigger the movie, the faster you have to be in your decision making and
more efficient
planning. Yeah. Because what you're trying to pull off is also bigger and more complex, and you don't want to waste people's time by waiting and figuring something out. Like you have to really do your homework and stick your head together with the director and make a great plan.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the conversation.
Thank you. You
Dziękujemy bardzo.
Came well prepared.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dziękujemy.